bird on a tree. I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful, you and me. We meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free. Take a step back to see the truth around you. From a distance you can tell.
Hello, I am at the Montserrat Contemporary Art, and this is my exhibition. My name is CHELO SEBASTIAN, and I've been painting for over 20 years. I work on paper with watercolor. I love watercolor, and usually I paint very large pieces, right? 20 by 40 inches, and this time I was asked to do miniatures, so it has been a bit of a difficult time for me to just stay in a small area of paper. I love paper, and I try and use different papers all the time. I also love doing collage, and this is these are two of my more recent collage pieces, and I find that I used to ride a bicycle very often, and I think it's really fun. And so I thought of, based on some of my photographs, the photographs of me riding a bike, I tried to make two people seem to be riding a bicycle, and make it interesting, because usually you see paintings about bicycling and they are very predictable. So I wanted to do something that was a little different, taking advantage of the properties of watercolor. The watercolor runs. I use mixed media as well, like resist. I use wax. What that does, if you put the wax on the paper when the paper is dry, so it makes it like this. These lines that have no paint, because it's a resist. So it gives the sense, I think, of energy and movement. If everybody is very static, just posing is boring, I find anyway. So I wanted to suggest a couple of boys maybe bicycling in the park, and lots of lines, lots of resist with wax, and also to get some of these things showing the paper. I go over the paper first when it's dry with chalk or some other paint, and then wait until it's dry and then peel it off. So the paper shows through. See, like all these areas, the paper shows through. This here shows like that. All kinds of the trees, textures, all those things. Because I think the paper is a very important part of my work. And also, I like to suggest a movement of the cyclist. They are not sitting there smiling, they are kind of talking to each other, almost bumping into each other. So that is all. Flowers have been so predictable and so numerous in paintings, in any kind of medium. So I thought I'm going to play with them a little bit and do a collage. So I do a lot of collage. For instance, in here, if you look at it closely, you can see there is a line here that really shouldn't be there, but that's because from the back of the painting, I just cut it up. And it doesn't matter, I don't see what's in the front, so I am not tempted to keep little bits of something I like. I just cut it up and then try to make it work, putting it together again on another piece of paper. So that's what I did there, and in most of my collage pieces. You see the cuts of the paper if you look closely. Again, the window, this is, the line of the collage where I cut it up. And there's a lot of resist that I do with, chalk or oil pastels. Resist means that you go with the watercolor over it, and the watercolor doesn't stay there. So if there is a line, the watercolor is on both sides, but the line stays put. And that is why, using yellow there or orange, and I go over it, but it stays yellow and orange. It doesn't mix with the watercolor I use. So I like to play like that. I find that watercolor is the oldest medium, like the Stone Age men use watercolor. So everybody really, since then, because it's a paint, it's not a paint, it's something that comes from a rock or from a different type of stone and mashed up, and you have color, you add water to it, and you can paint anywhere with that. So watercolor is very predictable. And also when I started learning watercolor about 25 years ago, everybody told me it's so delicate, you have to be very careful, because they knew I was messy. You have to be careful not to damage the paper, you have to do this and that. So after I got familiar with the watercolor medium, I started playing with it. And I thought, well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So I do, for instance, if I wanted to do the bicyclist or this one, I do the painting very quickly, and then from the back, I cut it up so that I am not tempted to save little bits, because I like them and say, oh yeah, I want this part. So, and then I get another piece of paper and start putting it together again. Sometimes I have lots of leftover paint pieces because the painting works very soon, very early on. And so I don't want to start just thinking, okay, this was from the other painting, I must put it in the new painting. I don't care about that. I just want it to work as a painting. So if you go to my studio, I have piles of pieces of work, pieces of paper that belong to all kinds of my paintings, and I use them once in a while on something else that is more abstract. But I love to have those because they are very nice, the color is good, and it saves me work when I do other paintings. So that is, I like color, I like the bright color that comes from the tube of watercolor instead of adding stuff to it. Sometimes I do, but most of the time I don't want to because I love the fresh color of the paint. And I also like, and you'll see it in most of my paintings, those runs like this part here. It looks like, I don't know, it could be that the window is dirty or something, but that is what happens with a watercolor when you splatter it with water, because it separates, the paint separates and creates things that, well, some people think is a disaster and they start a new one, but to me is important. Is part of the charm of a watercolor. If it's too neat, it's boring, and that's what I do. And I love fresh color, really interesting fresh color. So my paintings usually have, you could almost guess the type of color coming out of the tube because they are fresh. The colors are very fresh. Shall I go to the next one? Okay. This series here, not that one, but those two, those three, what I've done at the same time, and some of my latest watercolors, I had a hard time doing them because I love working big. You know, like the sheet of watercolor paper is this way and this way. And I was asked to do miniatures, and that was very hard for me to do. And also very difficult to find a subject matter that will be interesting enough in a small piece of paper. So I always like the signs when you are driving in the highway. I like the signs that are there that say, you know, like slippery when raining, or you know, don't turn to the left, or you know, something, whatever it is. I don't care what it is, but I love the signs, and I always think that the people that do those signs don't get enough credit. So I did a series of small pieces to do with the, you know, the signs that you find in the highway or in the city, for that matter. And some of them are all mixed up, but for instance, this one is nothing to do with that, but it's just a landscape that is a little odd. It has all kinds of little pieces that belong to a collage, to another collage, and it was done in 2021, so it's fairly recent. But the next one is one of the signs, and I always liked that slippery, you know, sign where it says slippery when wet. I thought I'll have to do something about that. So I did, like the sun coming through the clouds, stop raining, and just trying to make it interesting with the colors. It's a collage, very small, which was very difficult for me to do because, as I said before, I like to work big. So I started with this. It's another one for the exhibition because that's what they asked me to do. This one is an old home that is falling apart, and I always think there is a sadness and beauty in those, you know, part of town, the outskirts of town, where you find the houses that once they were beautiful and now they are falling apart. They are, you know, peeling the front, and you know, some of the windows are open forever. So I try to make one of those again with collage, because that's what I was supposed to be doing. And I use some of the little pieces of collage that I collect from other paintings, and it's kind of fun to make them belong to somebody else or something else in the piece of paper. So they take forever to finish, all of these. Little ones, even when they are small, they take a long time to be finished, that I feel like months sometimes, because I think it's done. And I have it in my studio somewhere, and after a while I look at it again and I think, no, this doesn't work. So I put it aside and work on the next one. So I always have 4 or 5 pieces going at the same time, because I need a rest from one that I can't possibly resolve. So this one, which seems to be very simple, took me forever, because it's an old house that's falling apart. I didn't want it to be too derelict, so I didn't want it to be sad. So anyway, I hope it works well, but I did include a little bit of yellow here and there, different yellows, and balancing it with a little bit in there. Could be junk in the road, whatever. This is another collage, and this is done, instead of on paper, is done on canvas. As I said before, I like to experiment. And so I instead of painting on the canvas, I put little pieces of paper that I painted separately, and it's a very abstract piece. And then I ended it up with all those dark lines because it was too not strong enough. So I added all this ink with a brush, black lines to make it punchier. And in some cases, I added some of the lines were too strong, so I washed it off a little bit, trying to make it work. So those paintings like this take me forever too, because I think it's finished, but I always have it in my studio and look at it when I happen to be there, and I know that it's not finished, but I don't really know what to do. So I took it apart many times. So this is a collage. You can see the edges, and there is no glass because I painted it at the end so that it's fixed in there. Even if water splashes on it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't disappear. So I just wanted to mention that I am not really abstract, but I'm very close to it. And some of my paintings, especially big ones, which is mostly what I do, are very abstract. And collage, I love the collage part. So this is another one to do with the signs of the highway or the road, that I find, as I said before, that they are so interesting looking. And of course I took some liberties with it and added some yellow stuff there because I thought it was not strong enough to work as a composition. So I added this here to make the viewer think about it. What could that be? Otherwise, it's just too boring or too easy. Instead of putting a house or something, so the sign is there, which I think is amazingly interesting, and it's again a miniature, and I thought it went well with the other one and the other paintings that are to do with telephone poles and a house falling apart. For an exhibition, I thought it would work together. And this one here, again, I did it at the same time, more or less. I love handmade papers, as well as the papers I usually use, but this is handmade paper, and it was a little piece that someone gave me as a gift to do something with. And it was too small for anything, and this type of paper, because it has a lot of fibers with different colors, it's very difficult to do something like that because it's too many lines, too much of a good thing. So I did 2 separate collage pieces to put in there, and it was at the same time I was working with the old house and the signs and all that. So I just I painted those with watercolor, as always, and ink, and cut them up more or less, and just put them in the painting, just hoping it will work with the other. They are recognizable but very odd, I like to think. And so that it seems to me that as a viewer, when you are looking at an exhibition, I have noticed that the people go, oh, nice, 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 and they go like that very quickly because a lot of paintings are very predictable. So I didn't want that to happen. I wanted it to be a little kind of, the viewer will wonder, what is that supposed to be type of thing, because it's unusual. So I sometimes do that, and this is one of them. And I thought it could be the fall, it could be the cottage. A lot of people have a cottage, and they go there in the fall or in the spring, and so that's what happened. And at the same time, I used the paper, the handmade paper that I didn't know what to do with because all the colors and the texture are very distracting for a painting. You just cannot paint in that. All right, this is another one of my collage pieces. Again, I don't do small paintings very often because I find that in a small space it's harder to do what I do than in a big place. And anyway, I wanted to finish this collage because I liked what happened. This is tissue paper, and I was thinking of a cloth bin. You know, when you do the laundry the old-fashioned way and you put your laundry outside, you have a wooden cloth bin, and that is what I was thinking that I'll do, because I'm always interested in the design of everyday things, and I feel that the people that did that design never get any credit because they are everyday things that are so uninteresting, they think. And I think it's really put together in such a way that I don't think anybody really has talked about this person and say, so-and-so 50 years ago started doing, did the cloth bin. So anyway, I did the cloth bin. You know how you push it on the top and you open it and then you hold stuff against the line. So I play with it a little bit, but that is really what it is. And I like what happened with it, and it works well in a small space. So that's basically what I have to say about this one. This one is again goes with the one slippery when wet that is on the other wall, and it's just about slippery when you turn, when you are driving. Again, it's telling you there is a sharp curve coming up, so be prepared for it. And again, looking at the sign, I always enjoy those signs, and so I play with the background of the sign, and because it's a small space, it's easy to find, to finish it quickly. You don't need a lot of things happening. You just need something interesting in that small space, basically. So I like to think it works well. And the paper, of course, is lovely. Like I enjoy, as I said before, I enjoy acid-free papers, and the textures are lovely. So I thought that the colors are important, and it works. I think it works. This one here, again, it started from a painting I was doing which didn't work, so I cut it up and tried to put it together again in some way. And I thought that this is very much like somebody's head. The profile, this is the nose, the eye, the hair. And I thought, what can I do with this? And this is the way I work with my collage pieces. They sometimes take months, even if it's a small one, because I look at it once in a while, go to my studio, I see it, and I think I have to finish this, and then I can't think of how. So it went on and on until one day I thought I have to finish it. So I started playing with it, and I think the title is Looking at a Butterfly. So I play with a little piece of paper that was very thin, and crumple it and glue it there, and then I added some colors that belong in some way with the head, and glue it again. So that's part of my collage. And then I gave a coat of the paint that I had used and mixed it all together in a little jar, and I painted all the negative spaces in there. And I thought it was kind of fun. And then when the gallery wanted a miniature show, I was looking at my stuff that I had done a long time before. This is 1997. And I thought, this is fun. You know, I never had an opportunity to show it anywhere, so I thought this is fun to show it. So it's odd, but I think people will stop and look at it twice because it doesn't make much sense. The title is Looking at a Butterfly. At a butterfly. So basically, it's very simple. But I like to think it works. And these ones here are, again, collage. And the first one, again, is older, 2008. As I said before, I started doing collage a long time ago. And it's a city. So I was thinking of all the the movement, the cars, the race strips, little areas that from far away don't make any sense. It's like looking at a city from the top of a hill, and the city is far, far away, and you recognize things, you know it's a city. And so I put some sunshine and some messy areas. They could be, factories or something like that. It's up to the viewer to decide what they think it is. And it's done on canvas, again, but it's a collage and done with watercolor, as all my pieces are. I love the watercolor, the colors of the watercolor. And anyway, it's a collage. This one is much more abstract. It goes with that in some way. The same elements, the same, it's a collage, it's done on canvas. So you can see, it doesn't need glass, the same as this one, doesn't need glass to frame. Is much more abstract. So I started doing, doodles, like if you are waiting for someone and you have a piece of paper and a pen, you start doing odd things on the paper. And so I started with doing it, but I did it on a nice watercolor paper and just play with it. So I put it aside, and about a month later, I found it and I said, I like what's happening here, I should finish it. So I started cutting it up in several areas and leaving the canvas show through the pieces of paper. Then the canvas has a very pale color. It's that kind of, not quite yellow, no gray, but it's very blah. And I thought it's very boring because of the color. I love color. So all my pieces have a lot of color. So I started painting the canvas as well. And this is what happened. A bit of sky there because I thought we needed it to give a sense of what it is. So it's something, possibly some buildings in there, and a lot of nothingness, that is just abstract shapes that I felt that worked very well with that. But it's really a very abstract piece, but it goes with the other one. So nobody I know does watercolor on canvas because it's impossible to do. It just breaks up in the wrong places. It just doesn't work well. So I found a way to do it. I do it on another very thin paper, and then I cut it up or rip it off, and then I put it on the canvas. Instead of painting directly on the canvas, I just do that. I just put it together, and I paint doodles and things, and then I cut it up. And I cut it up from the back, so I don't really know what I'm doing in the way of keeping little pieces, little parts that I like. You know how it is that you think, oh, I don't want to destroy this. So I just cut it from the back and then just play with it. Now these two took a long time to finish. So because they are very odd, they don't make sense. And I would do something and it didn't work, so I put them aside, and a month will go by and I find them again, and then I started thinking, okay, I can do this and that and the other thing. So I do a little bit more and then I'm stuck again. So I put it away again in my studio, and it's another month or two that goes by. So from the beginning to the end, it probably took me a couple of years to do them because I get frustrated, I get nowhere. But I don't want to get rid of what I have because I like what's happening. So I do have a lot of pieces like that in my studio that I want to finish someday, but I don't know when. So both of them are, 2007 when I finished it, 2008 when I finished them. So usually it doesn't happen that I wait so long, but very often does too. I was thinking of miniatures for the show here, and as I said before, I work big, and I don't like miniatures, they are too fussy, and so I started working for that and just playing with my brushes and with pencils and ink on a big piece of paper, and then I thought, well, if I cut this part and I add this other part and I make them two faces, that will be kind of interesting. And so I did that. So I thought that was more like a woman's face and the hair, and this other one is bigger, and I thought that could be the male, and maybe they were having a conversation or they were not very happy with each other, so I just put it together like that. 1997, so it's quite a long time ago, but I never saw it anywhere. But I always liked it. So looking at each other, that's the title of it. It's all watercolor and a little messy because my works are like that. So very simple. And geometrical designs, I always like that. And the key to that type of thing is the color, and I feel that I am a colorist, I love color, and so because of the colors I chose in there, it works. Otherwise, it's very little interest in it, because there's that little part here which is the focal point, works very well, but until I did that, it just didn't work. So I work on it for maybe 3 or 4 days, and I get frustrated and I put it away, and maybe 2 months later I'm looking for something else and I find it and I do a little bit more on it, thinking maybe I'll finish it because I like what was happening, but it's the finishing part that is so difficult. So finally I did make it, and I thought it was kind of fun, color-wise, and there it is. This one here is another one that belongs to the house back there. It's the same series, and I was thinking of when you are in a city, in a big city, there are always streets that have old houses that one time, some time ago, where the district was really booming and there were lots of people, and suddenly the street just became sad and lonely, and people move away, and there are only, the houses haven't been repaired, things look terrible, and there is a beauty on that too, but it's very kind of depressing. So I work with it. I only had the part of the house because I love houses, especially the old ones, and sometimes I just draw something and I don't go any further. So I didn't like the house, and so I thought maybe I can add the neighborhood on the side and just make it work. So the balancing of it is very simple. So I have the neighborhood there and also showing through the other side of the house, and it's very simple, but I was happy with it. The house looks like it's one of those places where nobody lives anymore. It's very sad looking, but I like to think the colors I use, including the sky, makes it cheerful, a little bit more cheerful. So that's what I have to say about that one. Next to here, again, they are both done, it's collage on canvas with watercolor, which is difficult to do. Nobody I know does that, actually, because they think it's a waste of time. But this one is just the water, maybe the sea, and the sun. See the boats in there, the suggestion of. The sky is looking like a storm is coming, and it's reflecting on the sand of the, by the sea. And parts of it, you know how it is? Parts of it are still sunny because the sun is there, but it looks like it's going to disappear very soon. So you have the sun there and a little bit in there. And the rest is just looking like it's going to be a storm soon, basically. That's what I wanted to show. And because of the clouds, the sun is not quite round, so I made it a little pointy and totally, unlike a sun. This one here is again done on canvas, just like this one on canvas, and these two. I just paint both. I just paint the scene I need on paper, and then cut up the pieces to glue them on the canvas. And I shouldn't say cut up. I just rip them off the paper. So the paper has little fibers that show beautifully on the edges. So it's much more interesting than if you cut it with a scissors and it's all clear and neat, This is not so. You just have that added interest of the paper ripped off by pulling it apart. And that adds something to the painting that is the personality of it. So this one has a lot of ink drawing with a pen on it. It's done on canvas, again, with watercolor on canvas, which, as I said before, nobody I know does that. But I think really it works quite well. And because both of them have a sun there, I like to think they are not too sad, because there's lots of black areas and suggestion of a storm, and again it's lots of black in there. But I think that because of the sun and a little bit of the sky, in both of them, they are cheerful in some way. So that's all I can say about that.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful, you and me. We meant to be in the great outdoors.
I don't normally work in small sizes. My work is usually large, and I love the freedom of moving my arm around the piece of paper. So when I was asked to do a show about miniatures, I thought, oh no, this is going to be so hard for me to do. So, but I started, and then I got interested in what was happening, and I am glad that I was forced in a way to do this, because now I feel more comfortable with miniatures. I know I can do them, and I had fun. And it's something that is new for me. And I like to think that the results were interesting, and I'm glad that I was asked.